Hello students, welcome to Veda Gate Academy. Myself Shivram, completed MTech from IIT Bombay, having 10 years experience in handling gate and engineering services. In this today's session, I am going to discuss about a very simple concept, that is the operation of ideal transformer. And this operation of ideal transformer, let us try to first start with under no load condition how the ideal transformer is going to behave, and in next case we will try to understand how the transformer is going to be working under loaded condition. So that I will take one extra engineering services question at the end of this session, so that you can able to apply on your own how to determine the polarities of induced EMF in the secondary winding, as well as the direction of current in the secondary winding. Once if you go through the entire video, then definitely you can able to do that task. Okay, right. So without wasting the time, let me try to start with the operation of ideal transformer. First of all, if I want to consider my transformer as a ideal transformer, so the thing is the name itself indicates that ideal transformer. That means we need to assume that the transformer core is having very high permeability. Okay, so theoretically I can say, or mathematically I can say, the transformer core is having infinite permeability. This is first assumption what we are going to consider. Okay, or what we are going to consider in order to make the transformer as an ideal transformer. Second one, we are trying to assume that the transformer is lossless transformer. That means we are assuming that there are no copper losses or there are no iron losses. Okay, and the third one is we are trying to assume that the transformer core is having a linear BH characteristics. Okay, linear BH characteristics. And the last consideration what we are going to consider in order to say my transformer is an ideal transformer is we are trying to assume that there is no leakage flux. There is no leakage flux. If I can able to consider these points, then I can say the transformer is a ideal transformer. Okay, right. So now let us try to start with the operation of ideal transformer. In order to understand, first what I will do is I will take a transformer core of some regular shape. Okay, so let us assume that this is my transformer core of some regular shape. Yeah, so this is my transformer core, on which what I will do is I am going to place two windings on the limbs. Generally the vertical portions of this transformer core are called as limbs, and the horizontal portion of the transformer core are called as yokes. Okay, so on the limbs we are trying to wound one winding. Let us assume that I am assuming this particular winding which is placed on this limb is having n1 number of turns, and I am trying to wound one more winding on this limb, and I will assume that, let me try to, okay, so this is another winding, and assume that this particular winding consists of n2 number of turns. Okay, so this particular winding, out of these, if you try to see the terminology of the windings, generally the winding which is connected to the source is called as primary winding, whereas the winding which is open or about to connect to the load is called as secondary winding. So that means, for suppose if I am assuming that this winding consists of n1 number of turns, and if these n1 number of turns are connected to a source, if I am connecting these n1 number of turns to a source, then it is treated as a primary winding, whereas the other winding which is about to connect it to the load, now here I have not shown the load. Okay, but actually what we have to do, since this is case 1 where I am trying to discuss the operation of transformer under no load condition, that is the reason I have not connected load. Let us assume that there is a switch over here. Okay, and these are the terminals. Now what I will do is I am connecting or considering a load over here. Let us assume L represents the load. So L represents the load, and if I am assuming that the switch is open, I can say the transformer is operating under no load condition. By the way, why I am discussing this point is the N2 number of turns are connected to the load, right? So whenever if these N2 number of turns are connected to the load, this kind of winding we can call it as secondary winding. I hope you understand the terminology for the windings. Again, I will quickly repeat. The winding which is connected to the source is called as primary winding. The other winding which is open or about to connect it to the load is called as secondary winding. Now, you may have a doubt that, okay, how can we, when we can say whether the winding is HV winding or LV winding, that means high voltage winding or low voltage winding. For that, simply what you will do is identify the relation between number of turns of primary and secondary side. For suppose, if the number of turns of the primary winding N1 is greater than the number of turns of secondary winding N2, in that case, my primary winding is called as HV winding, whereas the N2 turns, the secondary winding is called as LV winding. For suppose, if I am saying N1 is less than N2, after designing the transformer, if I am saying that N1 is less than N2, then in that case, my primary winding will act as a LV winding and secondary winding will act as a HV winding. This is a simple terminology. So there are two terminologies I can able to provide for the winding, either primary or secondary, and this primary and secondary winding terminology is given with respect to whether my winding is connected to the source or my winding is connected to the load. This is first one. And the second point you have to understand here is how can we give the terminology for HV and LV winding? So based on the number of turns, okay, based on the number of turns relation. So if N1 is greater than N2, primary act as HV and secondary act as LV, otherwise volta. Right. Now, if you are taking this particular thing, now let us assume that this is my source. I am applying a voltage V1 at a frequency F. By the way, what is the meaning of a transformer? The name itself indicates that, okay, it will transform, okay, it will transform the voltage levels of an AC signal. Here I am considering the AC signal. So generally the basic definition or function of transformer is a device which is used to transform the voltage levels of an AC signal. That means it may step up the voltage or it may step down the voltage, okay, it may step up or step down the voltage according to the application or our requirement. Now let us come back to the operation of this particular transformer. Let me slightly move up. Yeah. So now if you are taking this particular thing, so here what I will do is I am applying a voltage at a frequency F. So now we will parallelly write the discussion what I am going to discuss. The moment if I am applying a voltage at a frequency F, then this primary winding of the transformer, which consists of how many number of turns, guys? N1 turns. They will draw a current called I mu. This current I mu is called as technically or terminologically, I can say I mu is called as magnetizing component of current. Okay, I am representing here I mu. So what is the meaning of I mu, guys? The meaning of I mu is magnetizing component of current. So what is the purpose of this magnetizing component of current? The purpose of this magnetizing component of current, the name itself indicates that it is used to magnetize the core. Okay, so that means the purpose of this magnetizing component. What is the meaning of magnetizing of the core? Magnetizing of the core is nothing but it is used to produce the useful flux. Okay, and over the period in the classes we will try to understand whether it is reactive in nature or active in nature, or what is the purpose of reactive power. Every information we will try to understand during the classes, trust me. Okay, now again come back here. So the moment if I am applying a voltage at a frequency F to this primary winding, my primary winding of the transformer will draw a current called I mu, which is called as magnetizing component of current. Now this magnetizing component of current I mu is flowing through how many number of turns, guys? N1 turns. Okay, the moment whenever if the current is allowed to flow through the winding, okay, so Oersted will come into the picture. So what is Oersted statement? According to Oersted, whenever if current is allowed to flow through the winding, then around the winding or conductor magnetic flux lines will be produced. According to the statement of Oersted, whenever if current is allowed to flow through any conductor or winding, then around the conductor magnetic flux lines will be produced. Now how to determine the direction of magnetic flux lines? I will quickly tell you. So the direction of either current or magnetic flux lines, I will represent with phi symbol, will be obtained by using right hand thumb rule. So there are other ways also there. Here I am showing right hand thumb rule to represent the direction of magnetic flux lines. I will quickly tell you how to apply this right hand thumb rule, because basically in math, in our engineering machines, there are total 5 laws are there. If you clearly understand those 5 laws, you can able to play with any kind of machine what we are going to study in our gate syllabus. Okay, generally in gate syllabus we will have 4 machines are there. One is transformer, second one is DC machine, third one is induction machines, fourth one is synchronous machine. If you thorough with these 5 basic principles or laws, then definitely you can able to play with any kind of machine. Okay, what are those 5 things? One is Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. Second one is Fleming right hand rule, and third one is Fleming left hand rule. Fourth one is Lenz law. Fifth one is you will have this right hand thumb rule. Okay, majorly we will try to use these things. Of course, you will have Lorentz force equation and other stuff are also there. But if you can able to understand these 5 things, then definitely you can able to enjoy electrical machines. Now come back here. So how to determine the direction of flux lines using right hand thumb rule? So majority of the cases, I am not saying always, majority of the cases, whenever I will divide this application of right hand thumb rule with 2 cases. Case 1, whenever if you are handling a single conductor, for suppose if you are trying to, if you want to apply right hand thumb rule to a single conductor, so that means for suppose if I am assuming this is a circular conductor having some length L, okay, having some length L, this is a circular conductor having some length L, and assume that it is having some area of cross section A. Okay, area of cross section A. Now, for suppose if I try to allow some current through this conductor, so here what I am doing, I am handling with a single conductor. Now, whenever if I am handling a single conductor, in majority of the cases, how we have to apply right hand thumb rule is always what you will use is you can use thumb to represent direction of current, whereas our remaining four fingers are used to represent direction of flux lines. That means what I will tell you what the meaning is. Here what I have to do, I need to use thumb to represent direction of current, whereas the remaining four fingers of our right hand, okay, the remaining four fingers of our right hand are used to determine the direction of flux line. That means what you will do is simply this, if I am assuming this is my conductor, simply hold the conductor with the help of thumb in the direction of current. Okay, here if you observe here, my thumb is showing towards the direction of current. Now if I hold this conductor, what will happen? My four fingers for this particular conductor are entering, okay, below this conductor here and above this conductor over here. So that means my flux lines entering here and leaving here, entering here, leaving here. So can you tell me how can we indicate that? So I can able to indicate that the flux is entering over here and leaving. That means it is into the plane over here and out of the plane over here. So into the plane always we will represent with cross symbol. Out of the plane I can represent with the dot symbol. So the direction of flux lines are in this fashion. I hope you understand. So majority of the cases, whenever if you are dealing with a single conductor, this is the best way to determine the direction of flux lines. Again, I am stressing, my dear friends. Okay, so whenever if you are dealing with a single conductor, what you have to do, you need to use thumb to represent direction of current, whereas the remaining four fingers are used to represent the direction of flux lines. So that means for suppose even, okay, there are some situations of the machines where you are instead of drawing this entire conductor in this fashion, they will simply represent in this way and they will show the direction of current is in this fashion. Then whenever if I am having the conductor which is shown in this fashion, here what is the direction of current in this particular conductor, guys? The direction of current is into the plane. Then again the same thing, what you have to do, you need to show the thumb in the direction of current. Here the direction of current is into the plane or out of the plane? Into the plane. Now you can, okay, what you will do is with the help of the thumb, okay, which is showing the direction of current, you can try to run around these four fingers. Okay, if I hold this conductor in the direction of current with the help of thumb, my four fingers are moving in clockwise or anti-clockwise? My four fingers are moving in clockwise direction. So around this conductor, the direction of flux lines are in which direction, guys? The direction of flux lines are in clockwise direction. So this is the way we have to apply right hand thumb rule for a case of single conductor. I hope you understand how to apply right hand thumb rule for single conductor. Now what I will do is I will try to apply the same for a group of conductors. Let me take second case, okay, case 2, where a group of conductors, generally I can say a group of conductors is also called as a winding. Yes or no? Right? Group of conductors I can say as a winding. Now in order to understand this, what I will do is I am trying to consider, okay, a core of some regular shape. It may be rectangular or square shape, okay, on which what I will do is I am going to place the winding. Somehow I am trying to wound the winding in this way. Let us consider this is my winding. Now what I will do is in this winding I will try to allow the current I. Okay, so the direction of the current I in this winding is in this fashion. Now whenever if I allowed some current through any conductor or group of conductors, then around the conductor magnetic flux lines will be produced. Now as I said, if you are dealing with a group of conductor, then how to apply right hand thumb rule? So in order to apply right hand thumb rule, what you will do is you can use four fingers to represent the direction of current, whereas my thumb is used to represent the direction of flux lines. Okay, relax. Now I will try to apply here. So what is the direction of the current here? The direction of the current here is in the upward direction. Now what you will do is, if I am assuming this I can call it as a core, guys. Okay, this I can call it as a core, whereas this is a group of conductors, or it is nothing but my winding in which I am trying to allow the current. Now what you will do is you can hold the core. You can hold the core with the help of four fingers in the direction of current. Again, I am repeating. So you can hold this core with the help of four fingers in the direction of current. If I am assuming this is my core, and if you see my four fingers are in the upward direction. Why? Because my current is in the upward direction. Now can you tell me what is the direction of flux lines, guys? The direction of flux lines are towards left hand side or right hand side? Towards left hand side. So this is my direction of flux lines. So as we know, the flux is a closed path, curly path. So you are going to get the direction of flux lines in this fashion. right? So this is my direction of flux line. Here I have shown only one flux line, but actually you will have so many flux lines will be produced. Okay, trust me, we'll try to discuss all those points during regular classes, right? So I hope by this discussion we clearly understand when we have to apply right hand thumb rule. So this is I am saying that majority of the cases in all the missions whatever we are discussing, we will follow the same procedure, guys, right? Now let us come back to our discussion. I hope by this time you understand now, right? So now here, the moment if I try to the primary winding draw I mu, this I mu current is flowing through how many number of turns, guys? N1 number of turns. As we know, the reason behind the production of flux is magnetomotive force. Okay, since we are dealing under no load condition, that means this switch is in open position or closed position, this switch is in open position. So I can say the transformer is operating under no load condition. So the moment if the switch is open, as we know, it is operating under no load, the corresponding MMF I can represent with F0, which is called as no load MMF. The meaning of MMF itself, if you what is the full form of MMF? Magnetomotive force. What is the meaning of magnetomotive force? It is the amount of force which is used to or required to drive the flux inside a core. Okay, inside a core. So the amount of magnetomotive force, that means the amount of force which is used to drive the flux inside a core is called as magnetomotive force. And since it is under no load, this is called as no load MMF. So can you tell me what is the formula for no load MMF? All these basics we will try to discuss during the regular classes. No load MMF is equal to what you are going to get, N1 into I mu. So this MMF will try to drive the flux, which I can call it as operating flux phi naught. Okay, now can you tell me how to determine the direction of flux lines? The direction of flux lines will be obtained by using right hand thumb rule. Here is it a group of conductors or a single conductor? Here these are group of conductors, they're nothing but winding. So whenever if you are dealing with group of conductors, use our 4 fingers of right hand to determine the direction, to use the direction of current, whereas thumb is used to represent the direction of flux lines. Now if I hold this core with the help of 4 fingers in the direction of current, my thumb is showing upward direction or downward direction, guys? Upward direction. So the direction of flux lines are going to be projected in the upward direction. So this flux I can call it as operating flux, or else I will write over here. So this flux is called as operating flux. As we know, the flux magnetic flux is a closed path. It will try to close on its own in this fashion. So this is my direction of flux lines, main field flux phi naught. Are you following what I am conveying, guys? Right. So here this is my direction of flux lines, what you are going to get. Now the moment if these flux lines are produces, then what will happen? This flux phi naught will be linking with this N1 number of turns. Okay, here Faraday's will come into the picture. Why Faraday's will come into the picture? What is Faraday's law? Whenever if there is a relative space variation or relative time variation between set of conductors and a magnetic field, then EMF gets induced across set of conductors, right? Here, what phenomenon is going to happen? Here, can I say my group of conductors are moving or stationary? They are stationary in nature because I have taken a limb. On this limb, we have wounded a winding, and this winding will be stationary. So it is not going to be moving with respect to the space, right? Now here this is not a rotating, it is a static device, right? Transformer. So it is my conductors or group of conductors are stationary, but the flux which is linking with this winding is time varying in nature. Why it is time varying? Because we are trying to apply alternating voltage. Because of this alternating voltage, the current is also alternating or time varying in nature. As this current I mu is time varying, the flux which is linking with the winding is also time varying in nature. So here the conductors are stationary, but flux is time varying. So obviously we are creating relative time variation between set of conductors and magnetic flux lines. So obviously EMF gets induced across set of conductors, and this kind of EMF generally we can call it as statically induced EMF. So that means what I would like to say here is okay, so whenever if you are having a conductors or group of conductors, if these group of conductors are stationary, okay, if these group of conductors are stationary, but the flux which is linking with those conductors are time varying in nature, the flux which is linking with those conductors are time varying in nature, such kind of EMF whatever induced is called as statically induced EMF. We can call it as statically induced EMF. And my dear friends, in transformer, what kind of EMF gets induced as statically induced EMF. Whereas if you are taking a DC machine, in DC machines the conductors are moving, okay, or they are moving inside a flux magnetic time invariant flux lines. That means we are giving a DC supply, so the flux is time varying, sorry, time invariant flux. So my conductors are going to be rotating or moving inside a time invariant magnetic field. So obviously flux cutting action is going to happen, and such kind of EMF which is produced is called as dynamically induced EMF. Okay, so that means in dynamically induced EMF, which we are going to handle in DC machines, my conductors are moving, but flux is time invariant in nature. Okay, flux is time invariant in nature. So I hope you are clear with that one. So I am not going to deviate from the concept what I am discussing. Now if you come back here, okay, if you try to come back over here, as I said, as the flux is time varying and the conductors or group of conductors are stationary, EMF gets induced across these N1 turns. Let us assume this EMF on the primary side I can represent with E1, and some EMF gets induced across N2 turns. Out of this, again, the statically induced EMF, both are statically induced EMFs only, but out of this E1 and E2, I can call E1 is called self-induced EMF, whereas E2 is called as mutually induced EMF. Okay, so why E1 is called self and E2 is called mutual induced EMF? If you clearly again recollect the basic definitions of self and mutual induced EMF, the definition of self-induced EMF is it is the EMF. It is the EMF induced across N1 turns or EMF induced across some set of conductors because of flux linkages. Because of flux linkages which are produced. These flux linkages phi naught are produced because of current flowing through its own winding or on different winding, because of its current flowing through the same winding. Again, I am completely giving the definition of self-induced EMF. So what is the definition of self-induced EMF? It is the EMF induced across set of conductors because of flux linkages which are created by the current flowing through the same winding. Whereas what is the meaning of mutual induced EMF? The definition of mutual induced EMF is it is the EMF induced across set of conductors because of flux linkages, and these flux linkages are created by current flowing through its say own winding or in the different winding, right? Because this EMF is produced because of anyway this flux which is linking with N2 turns, but this flux phi naught is not produced because of the current flowing through these N2 turns. This flux phi naught is produced because of current flowing through N1 turns. That is called as mutual induced EMF. So because of these flux linkages, what will happen, guys? There are two EMFs are going to be induced. Now, to determine the direction of these induced EMFs or polarities, we are trying to apply the direction. That means the direction of these statically induced EMF will be obtained by using Lenz's law. Okay, by using Lenz's law or Lenz's law. So, what is the statement of Lenz's law? According to the statement of Lenz's law, always the produced quantity will try to oppose the changes in the cause for the production of it with the same dimensions. Okay, again I am repeating the definition of Lenz's law. According to Lenz's law, always the produced quantity will try to oppose the changes in the cause for the production of it, okay, of same dimension. So here, if you clearly understand what the meaning, what I am trying to convey over here, if I try to understand here E1 and E2 are the final produced quantities, yes or no? Right. These E1 and E2 are produced because of phi naught, the flux which is linking with N1 and N2. And this flux phi naught is produced because of no load MMF F naught. That means, can I say Lenz's law will E1 and E2 will oppose this phi naught? No. We need to compare of same dimensions. So E1 and E2 voltages, okay. So volts are the units and flux are Webers, right? So these are two different quantities. So you need to compare the opposition with respect to the same quantities. And this flux is produced because of no load MMF. Again, my no load MMF is having different dimensions. So E1 and E2 will not oppose F naught. Again, F naught is produced because of which current? Magnetizing current, right? So this magnetizing current is produced because of voltage V1. So this is the major cause for the production of what? E1 and E2. So according to Lenz's law, these produced quantities will try to oppose the changes in V1 and V1. Okay, changes in the applied voltage. So what is the meaning of changes in the applied voltage? That means, for suppose in terms of phasor diagram, without giving more in depth, so if applied voltage phasor is in this direction, the induced EMF in the primary and secondary will be exactly 180 degrees out of phase this one. So that means if I am saying this is my induced EMF which is exactly 180, E2 will be also exactly 180 degrees out of phase here. But I can say the induced EMF in primary and secondary both are in phase with each other, but they are exactly 180 degrees out of phase with respect to applied voltage. That is happened because of Lenz's law. Okay, and here if you observe the length of these phasors of E1 and E2, I have shown different. Okay, that means I have shown the phasor length of E1 is more compared to E2 based on the assumption that the number of turns of first winding or primary winding are more compared to secondary winding. So this is the basic idea about how the transformer is going to work under no load condition, so I hope you understand this particular thing. So now we'll try to discuss about more information regarding how the transformer is going to work under loaded condition in the next session.